Hi guys, for those of you who don't know, I'm Leigh Harris and this is Mark Stewart. Hi Mark.
Hi Leigh.
How are you doing?
Good, brother.
Yeah, okay, alright. We're here to discuss martial arts and related topics.
Yeah.
So, for those people who don't know who you are, maybe you'd like to tell them a little bit about yourself in relation to your martial arts journey.
Yeah, sure. I started martial arts all the way back in 1862. No, I mean 1974, and in Kalamazoo, Michigan, which is of course in the Midwest of the USA. And I started out with a style of Okinawan karate called Uechi-ryu. And did that for 25 years or so. Got to 5th dan level and taught that. Had my first dojo when I was 20 years old. And actually, I've been teaching martial arts ever since I was a brown belt in Uechi-ryu. I was 16 years old and teaching at the dojo. Right, so right away, I mean, I got into the idea that it's a good way to learn martial arts is actually to share it.
Yeah.
And okay, so also in Kalamazoo. I was a point fighting competitor, a karate point fighting competitor, and did that for a number of years. It was pretty exciting, really fast paced. It's kind of almost the same as fencing in a sense, except that you're using punches and kicks.
Yeah, sure.
Not super realistic, but great for distance and timing and, and all that kind of thing, speed, reaction time, all that. And then I got into kickboxing, and at the time it was what they called the PK, the Professional Karate Association's type rules. I think in Europe they call it American kickboxing.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure. Right? Maybe. Yeah.
And so basically, that's boxing with kicks to the body and the head only, and not to the legs.
So that's a little bit about. I know there's a lot more than that, but like, how would you? If somebody says, "What are you teaching now?" What would you? And then maybe we can go on. How did you get to where you are now?
Sure. The primary huge influences in my martial arts and what I practice and teach are both Bruce Lee's Jeet and Filipino martial arts, which we happen to call Kali because it's the Filipino-American reference to the what is normally called escrima or Arnis in the Philippines.
Correct. Yeah. We've had a lot of discussions about that. Yeah. So which is maybe a topic we could come on to a little bit later.
Yeah,
maybe.
Certainly.
It's slightly controversial, but it's a kind of interesting topic for martial arts nerds, maybe. Yeah.
So basically, my whole thing is that I look at the idea of being well-rounded, but not exactly in the same way as other people do. I mean, that could mean that I need stand-up striking, ground fighting, grappling, weaponry, so on and so forth, right? That's one well-roundedness, and I'm all for that as well. But the well-roundedness that I like to approach is actually being able to teach in different genres.
Right, yeah.
Which would mean like life skills and fitness, self-defense, or what's now called combatives and defensive tactics, that kind of thing. Combative sports and martial art. And I like to be able to tweak things slightly from the same sources, but be able to function in all the genres.
So, I mean, like, a question that often occurs to me is like, I mean, most people, when they get into martial arts, one of the primary reasons is they want to be able to defend themselves. But in my opinion, I think that if you're going to stay in martial arts for any length of time, you've got to have other reasons. Yeah,
for sure.
So in your opinion, what does martial arts give to people apart from the obvious, possibly the ability to defend themselves? What other function does it have?
To get on the Bruce Lee philosophical vibe, self-actualization, problem solving, critical thinking, confidence, doubt, fear. I mean, pretty much full spectrum. Right. I mean, I remember reading in someone's book way back in the day that the dojo is the microcosm of the universe, and it can be if you're open to that kind of thinking about things.
I mean, because one of the comebacks to that maybe is that if we look at the MMA world, and particularly, this is my opinion, a personal opinion, if you look at the way the UFC markets itself, it's really gone kind of like down the WWE kind of professional wrestling.
Yeah, pretty much sensationalism.
Yeah, and it's kind of moved away from maybe what maybe the philosophical roots or the self-development side. It just seems pretty much, as you just said, sensationalism.
Yeah, but there are some good MMA coaches and fighters out there that many do come from a traditional martial arts background, and many retain that thing that we find missing in general.
Yeah, sure. I'm not trying to paint all the people within MMA or even in the UFC, because there's some really cool dudes within and some great thinkers as well, but just the way it's presented to the general public, because it sells, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So let's go back maybe to the JKD thing, right? So you mentioned Bruce Lee, yeah?
Yep.
So I don't want to get kind of all too anal about it and the whole what is JKD, what is it not. But what's your take on, what's your definition of JKD? Jeet Kune Do, what's your definition?
Even where to start on it. I guess it's one man's journey of self-discovery and self-actualization.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so why do people need to study or want to study somebody else's journey of actualization?
Well, I think we do. It's just like how many people's process of actualizations do we have to study?
Right.
You know what I mean? In other words, what I'm trying to say is that the idea of continually cross-training in a number of different systems is totally different than being inspired from one or two sources, or even being inspired from one or two sources and just keeping your eyes open and researching what's out there and getting a good understanding of what it is, but not necessarily having to spend all of your time doing all of the things that you research.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so,
I think so, yeah.
I mean, I look at those as kind of like being two opposite things, but those are extremes in a certain degree, so there's a lot of room in between.
Right.
You know, it's just an easy way to frame it, basically, you know.
Okay.
But I think both are great, and it just happens to be what you find enjoyable or what you find beneficial.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
The two styles that you've mentioned so far, as in, obviously you mentioned your traditional background, but JKD or Jeet Kune Do and Kali, or Filipino martial arts, yeah? Are there many similarities between them? Is there an overlap between them?
I think so, and I'll use your term of weapon-centric.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Bruce Lee did say at one time that the three primary inspirations for his martial art of Jeet Kune Do were Wing Chun, boxing, and fencing. And boxing and fencing being Western methods, and of course Wing Chun being Chinese or Eastern. And the latter stage Jeet Kune Do that I happen to teach as a main emphasis of what I teach in JKD has a lot less Wing Chun in it, or isn't very apparent that it's in it, although it is still in it, in my opinion. And but it's a lot of it is based on the weapons principles of fencing, particularly timing, distance control, mobility and footwork, all those kind of things. And then on the other end, the Filipino martial arts, of course, you know, come from blade fighting as well. And I won't get too much into detail to that. They're not exactly the same. In fact, they're quite contrasting, but that's what makes it interesting to me, kind of to continue the journey of what my first teacher, tedlucaylucay, who was also Sifu in Jeet Kune Do under daninosanto, and also a training partner of Guru Dan in the Filipino martial arts. But anyway, so they're in contrast. There's a lot of similarity because of basically of, well, to me the similarity is because I analyze it based on a scientific approach. And what I mean by that is I look at the geometry involved, the biomechanics, or, you know, kinesiology, physics, and things of that nature. And so, in universal movement. And so once you do that, actually, basically you can analyze any system and kind of pick gems or see where there's common denominators and where there's differences. And I'm kind of drifting off in my thought, but the point is they're both weapon-centric.
Yeah.
And, and I'm kind of continuing the path of a sort of alignment with the principles and tactics of both the Filipino
that was pretty noticeable when you were playing around with the sword earlier, or the machete earlier. You could see the alignment between the two. There was the fencing. Of course, what I wanted to mention as well, I know you're aware, is that Western boxing, especially the bare knuckle version, was influenced by Western fencing anyway. So
correct. Exactly.
It all goes around.
Exactly.
It goes around, comes around.
I mean, the world is smaller than we think it is.
Yes.
I mean, all these civilizations have influenced each other from the very beginning and continue to. So it's kind of like...
Yeah, I mean, I see stuff, because I'm based in the Philippines, and you see people in the Philippines, some people in the Philippines doing stuff, and I look at it and I think, that looks like to me that they got it from a video from something from daninosanto lineage, which is Filipino-American, arguably, right? And it's not that they're stealing, it's because people are influencing each other because we live in an interconnected world.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, I mean, there is things that are happening in America that are easier to find in America than they are in the Philippines, and vice versa, right?
Correct.
It doesn't mean they don't influence each other.
Right, and then going back to what we were saying before is that the Spanish fencing influenced the Filipino martial arts.
Yeah, because if over 300 years, if it didn't influence, then the Filipinos must have been pretty unique.
Yeah.
And
I think many in the Philippines do, basically recognize the fact that there's a lot of escrima and escrima.
Yes. Yeah. And it may even have been that the Spanish probably picked up a few things from the Filipinos as well, right? I mean, it's just human nature, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think nationalism stops. It's about kill or be killed. You're not going to say, I'm not going to do that because it comes from a different country.
Yes.
It's about survival.
Correct.
Mark, we've talked about this so many times, and we've also talked about discussing it or putting something out. I've suggested to you that maybe you want to write about it.
Yeah.
But let's just do so on camera. Let's have a little chat about the KALI word. Okay,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Your take on it, because I think you've got quite a unique background on it, and maybe you want to talk about that first. So explain what you know what I mean by saying you've got a unique insight, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my guru tedlucaylucay, his family is from the Visayan Islands, right? And they moved to Hawaii.
Right.
And his father was studying the Villa Brea system under Flora Villa Brea, right? And that's the term that they used was Kali.
Right.
And the story behind it is that one of Flora's teachers was a blind princess, a Muslim Moro blind princess, and that's what she called it, was Kali. And that's really the only thing that I know about it from my lineage, okay?
Right, and you
Kali.
know that the story of the blind princess, there's counter, like in terms of the story I read, right?
Yes.
That when, who was he, is he the cousin, was Flora Villarreal Antonio Illustrissimo's cousin, correct? If I remember right.
Yeah, well, I remember there's a connection. Yes.
Yeah, I think they were cousins.
Yeah.
But anyway, when apparently, according to the book on Illustrissimo, the only published book on Illustrissimo, and I think the only one, the Tuttle book anyway, if I remember if it's a Tuttle book, we can check that later, that when Antonio Illustrissimo was told the story that Flora Villarreal was claiming that he was taught by a blind princess, he just laughed so much he had tears rolling down his cheeks,
Yeah, but those kind of stories are quite prevalent.
Yes, correct.
In the Philippines, and so I don't take that either way. It's just I mean, I continue to use the term because that's what we've always called it.
Yeah.
And then of course I had read the article by Perry Gill Malari, right, from the Manila Times in regards to the book that I think was published in the 1950s, was it? It's come from an earlier source.
Well, it's the only. Is it not? That's the. I wish I had. That is the oldest dated reference to the word Kali, and it's not until it was the 50s, I believe. Yeah,
I think it was, and then they're suggesting that it came from the word kalis, which is a type of sword,
right? Yeah.
And that they just dropped the S, and they mentioned the kalit as well. That a T pronunciation at the end of the word was also used.
But what's interesting?
I mean, so I'm not.
You're open-minded about it.
Yeah, and I guess the point that I want to make is that I think most Filipinos will say is that they didn't hear of the term until it was used by daninosanto. And of course Dan also trained with the Villarreal Argusa group, and that's why he used the term. Now Dan did further research, and he has a different understanding of where the term comes from, okay? And putting that aside, in my experience, I guess what I want to say is that even though the arts that I practice, or that Guru tedlucaylucay learned, which is basically the three primary arts, were Largo Mano from Leo Heron, and that was called Arnis, and Sarada Escrima from Angel Cabales, and that was called escrima, like I just said, and then of course the Villarreal Argusa was called Kali, and they were also highly influenced. This is in Stockton, California, and basically, they moved from the Philippines to Stockton, or via Hawaii to Stockton, and And then, of course, John Lacoste was also an influence.
Which is where we maybe could take another related topic is the whole thing about Filipino boxing.
Yes, yeah. And so before we get into that, I would say that I look at what I do as Filipino-American martial arts.
Right.
Yes, it's Filipino, but it's the Filipino-Americans' expression of it.
Yeah.
Basically, and which takes us back to the term panatukan.
Yes.
Or Filipino boxing, right? And again, it seems to be a term that Filipinos are familiar with, but that no one really ever used to describe what it is that they were teaching in the Philippines. And so again, I look at the reference of tedlucaylucay and the kind of unique thing that he was both a Kali practitioner and a boxer at the same time, a competitive boxer. And so there was influence going both ways into the Kali and the boxing into the Kali. And that his son also continued that same idea to where there was that cross-pollination going on. And my conjecture is that someone asked him, well, Guru Lucky, what would you call this? You know, I mean, if we're going to share this stuff, what would you call it? And according to Lucky, he said he was going to call it suntakan. But it sounded too much like shotokan.
Right, exactly.
And so they came up with panatukan, right? And of course, they pronounce it a bit differently and spell it a bit differently, but that's neither here or there. But again, so I think it's one of those things to where that it kind of re-entered the Philippines, actually from Filipino Americans. Yeah, in my opinion.
Yeah. And we can also conjecture maybe that some of the material that went to Hawaii, when we're talking about 1920s, we're going back with Filipinos going to America goes back further than that, but large-scale migration was the 1920s, I believe, was it?
No.
I believe it. But anyway, we're talking going back some time. Things that went to America or Hawaii, via Hawaii to America, some things may have been preserved there that were lost in the Philippines.
Yeah, and certainly, I don't know enough about it to go into it, but I would say also that some of the guys that are still in Hawaii and that didn't go to California have a slightly different version of the things that developed in California.
Right, which is the same if you look at how many different versions of Wing Chun are there. You see the similarities and the differences,
correct.
And the different origin stories as well,
correct. So I find it all very interesting, but again,
the thing
even though I find it interesting, I still have to kind of sometimes laugh at myself to be too concerned with it because I'm more interested in the science.
Sure, of course. Yeah. No, it's an interesting from an historical point of view, but if you take it too seriously, it becomes like arguing about how many angels can you get on the head of a pin.
Yeah, it's just a pin.
It's like okay, it's interesting, but what about the technique? What about what's the art form?
Right on.
Yeah. Okay. So a word that you use comes up quite a lot because obviously I've known Mark for a long time, and you like to talk about the different genres. Could you kind of develop that? What do you mean by genres?
Well, I see the term martial art actually is actually the umbrella term,
right,
for fitness and life skills, which is kind of hobby-oriented, recreational activity, but with some deeper meaning. Traditional martial art, which people have different reasons for studying, and one is to continue a tradition, and preserve a culture and a tradition.
Sure.
Combative sports was basically is fighting with the rules and weight classes, variations of rules and such, and then you would have self-defense, which is a genre, and then which has subgenres. Because you have self-defense for civilians that are based on some legal aspects that we have to deal with, right? Force continuum and such. For law enforcement officers, maybe even a stricter, supposedly, a stricter adherence to it. And then, of course, basically military, kill or be killed. And so I've had the opportunity to teach all of them, and
but even in the military now, a lot of military activity is basically law enforcement or civil control.
Correct. Yeah, so it's overlapping, and there's gray areas and all that kind of thing. But that's pretty much what I mean by genres. So
what I know from talking to you before is like you're interested in the balance of the genres rather than focus on one particular genre.
That's just me.
Sure.
I just want to be flexible enough to be able to share what I have in the different genres when needed, and usually that's done privately with private students. So what they want, I do my best to give them, regardless of the genre.
Right.
So that's just for me. And others will specialize in a particular genre, which is great as well. And But what I don't like is pitting a genre against another genre,
sure.
saying, oh, well, they do that like that, and we do this like this, and our genre is better than their genre.
Yeah, and then there's always a genre that's dominated.
I'm tired of that shit, basically.
Yeah. I first met you, was it 2000?
2000. 2000 was my inaugural seminar in Bangkok at the YWCA.
Yeah, okay, I remember it vaguely well.
Young woman.
Yes. So,
but there weren't no young women there.
So,
see what I'm saying?
What are you up to now? I mean, that's 19 years ago. So where do you teach?
Let me go from that historical perspective of 2000. And then I moved over here in 2001, opened a gym on Sukhumvit Soi Sip Sam. And that was open for, I think, just a year. And then we would like bounce around and get different locations for a few years. Then I moved to Singapore to teach defensive tactics to ICA, Immigration Checkpoints Authority, and then kind of taught martial arts on the side over in Singapore. We moved back to Thailand, Bangkok briefly for a year, and we've been in Sattahip, Thailand, which is the Gulf of Thailand, eastern seaboard they call it, and out in the countryside, and we use Thai hillbillies, so we love it.
Yeah. It's a nice area.
But so now basically I have increased the number of seminars that I teach each year.
So you're teaching seminars in which countries?
Yeah, I'll start with Southeast Asia. I continue to go to Singapore once a year, and haven't been to the Philippines for a long time, but will be back again to the Philippines in June. Then South Asia, I've been going to Sri Lanka forever, continue to do that. Going to India for the first time next year in March, at the same period that I go to Sri Lanka. And have added Sweden. Looks like I'll be going twice a year now to Sweden.
That's cool.
Have increased the seminars in the U.S. to going twice per year, primarily in the Midwest, Southern California area, and in the past few years up in the Pacific Northwest and state of Washington, Seattle, and Burlington areas and things like that. I don't think I'm leaving anything out. Oh, Australia.
Okay.
Yeah, so I started going to Australia about 6 years ago, just Melbourne. And I have a really good friend that we call our son, Mr. Andrew. And so I would basically do private lessons with him the entire time I was there. And then we started doing seminars. And I have now picked up Brisbane and Sydney as well. Nice. So I'll be there for a month in January to February.
Do you have a favorite place amongst all those places?
Wow. Not really. I mean, I'm really happy with all of them because they're all different.
Yeah.
But what I make sure that I do, because I love bicycling. I always have, but I recently picked it up in the past 2 or 3 years, and I bicycle now for 4 hours a day, down in Sattahip. But anyway, I make sure everywhere I go that I got a mountain bike lined up.
Nice.
So I spend all day riding the bike and exploring where I go.
Not in Bangkok.
Hell no. I wanted to talk about something else, actually. The reason I came to Bangkok this trip, besides to see my lovely friends, is that we were scheduled to shoot an instructional videotape, but we decided to change the format.
Right.
And so we're going to try the idea of the new format, but it probably will take until July before I come back up to Bangkok.
Right.
And I have to work some things out. But it looks like we'll be doing the Jeet videotapes, actually curriculum material, as a separate kind of thing, instead of an integrated thing that we were discussing before, and doing that in Australia.
Okay.
Actually, yeah. And so that's coming up. My ebook is completed.
And what's your ebook about?
Well,
it's top secret, is it?
It's all E. It's how to fight on E. No.
That's a unique perspective.
It's based on my summary of tedwong's teachings over a 14-year period, but more accurately, I wrote it 2 years, within the first 2 years that I trained with him.
Right.
And we had dim sum one day, and I showed him the outline. He says, "This is good." He goes, but it was just the outline. And he goes, "No one will understand this." He goes, "You'll have to write a book about it."
Okay.
And so finally it's taken all this time.
Right.
But I'm happy to have waited this long because I pretty much understand what I'm doing now.
So the process of writing the ebook, how long did it take you?
Actually, to be honest with you, there's not a lot of text in it. And what needs to be completed is the photographs.
Right.
But it's based on an outline that I refer to as the engagement continuum.
Yeah, yeah.
And so the engagement continuum basically starts at the tip of the pyramid and deals with interception and controlling distance and fighting from the distance of being able to strike with the least chance of being hit back.
Yeah.
It starts with that perspective, and then it has a descending scale of engagement and distance, and works its way back up again. But I mean, there's too much detail to talk. That's why it's an ebook.
Exactly. Yeah. So when do you think that's going to be coming out?
As soon as I take them damn pictures.
Right.
So I hope to do the photos in Australia as well.
Okay.
Yeah, it's possible. I'll be there for a month, so
Yeah, I look forward to that.
just need to get a photographer and get it done.
Interesting.
Yeah. But anyway, it's going to be, it is based on the engagement continuum, but I hope to, that it's, as well as my videos, I hope that it becomes a guideline, not only for Jeet Kune Do students, specifically mine, and JKD people in general, but as a method of enhancement for stand-up fighting for combative sports practitioners in regards to striking and stand-up. And to a certain extent, self-defense. So that's kind of what I'm looking at doing more of is, even my seminars, a lot of them are billed now as enhancement. For enhancement seminars versus teaching the system per se. You know.
I mean, because the market for Jeet Kune Do is not that large at the moment.
Well, there's a Jeet Kune Do world, but I mean, that's pretty tight in regards to, like, they pretty much stick with who their teacher is.
Yes.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's the loyalty thing. It's quite traditional in that sense.
Yeah, and they're interested in just getting better at their version and understanding of Jeet Kune Do, which is totally acceptable.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that's kind of exciting for me because of my return to nature and fitness is, especially with biking and other things like that, hiking and core bodywork training and all that kind of thing, is that I'm working on expanding my wife's business, which is called Indigo, to include like adventure travel, like 2-3 days excursions, basically anywhere in the world, to where myself and another coach and possibly a third coach can go on these little adventures that include things other than martial arts and combatives and kind of combine them.
Yeah.
And so that's my latest project that I'm trying to do, you know, and because I'm 60 years old now, right, and I want to stay fit. But also, there's this bucket list that we all have, like where we want to go and what we want to do. So and I see that as a way to do it.
Okay, so come on, let's talk about what's on your bucket list.
My bucket list?
Yeah, what's on your bucket list?
Well, ribs and chicken for one, barbecue. Well, actually, I'll tell you the three that I'm setting up right now. One is at Satahip at Banchong Samisan, a beautiful fishing village, clear water on the Gulf of Thailand, with a ferry out to an island to do clear water snorkeling. That's my first thing. It probably won't happen, but as far as generating it.
Human beings are creators, not,
but it'll happen eventually. And if it doesn't, it's fine because I do it every day anyway. But and then the other one that will happen for sure is at the Olympic Mountains in Washington, the state of Washington.
What are the Olympic? That's the name of the mountain.
Yeah, well, there's two ranges. There's I'm going to forget now. They're right across. Ryan, do you remember the two mountain ranges? They have the Olympics on one side and then the other Cascades.
Cascades.
Yeah. So we have the Cascades and the Olympics.
Google that internet. Google it rather. Yeah.
So it's it's called the Puget Sound area. Beautiful ocean again. You know, like just lovely place. And so I love it up there. And so we're doing that for sure. People are already signed up for it, and that'll just be 2 days on a weekend. Actually, a Sunday and a Monday. And biking and hiking and martial arts training and that kind of thing. And that will be in May, so it'll be just starting to get a little warmer there. You know, so it's going to be a little bit nippy. Like probably 15 centigrade, something like that. You know, maybe 20 up into the day. And then, and then I'm trying to do something with Matt, our buddy Matt.
It's Sweden.
Matt the Hammer. But we want to do Iceland.
Why Iceland?
Because it's just lovely.
I mean, it looks amazing. I've never been there.
Just physically, you know, and he's been there and he likes it. And we have some people, some Swedish dudes that would like to join us there. And so that looks like it'll happen in 2021. The other thing I'm working on with a good friend is the possibility of doing New Zealand as well.
Right.
And that could be 2021 as well. So
Right, yeah.
you know, I can't really go any further beyond.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
But, I mean, I want to go everywhere. I want to go to Algarve.
Yeah.
I want to go to Algarve,
Yeah.
Portugal. That's
Yeah.
another one that's on the list. as
Okay.
well. Yeah.
Okay, so just thanks, Mark. Yeah, and
Actually, it's great to see you again because we haven't seen each other for quite a time.
yeah, when was the last time?
A couple of years.
A couple of years. Yeah, well, yeah.
You know.
10
And
plus
actually, I
3.
haven't been to Bangkok for. Well, actually, last time I was in Bangkok was when Lee Morrison and Matt taught that.
That was true. Yeah. That was
Okay, brother. So be cool.
Cheers. Thank you.
And let's go drink beer.
Okay. Come.
Uh.
Did he come?